The shuttle landed with a soft hum, and Han stepped onto the metal floor of Galactic Unity Academy for the first time. He was 19 years old, one of only 12 human students chosen for the exchange program this year. Around him, beings from dozens of different worlds walked past. Some had 4 arms, some floated instead of walking, some had skin that changed color with their mood. Tried not to stare, but it was hard. He had spent his whole life on Earth, dreaming of the stars. Now he was finally here. A tall creature with blue scales and beautiful wing fins on its back walked past him without looking. Then another. Then a group of 5 more. They all looked similar, bright blue skin that shimmered like water under sunlight, and perfectly matched wing fins that spread out behind them like living art. These were one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. Had read about them before coming here. They were known for their beauty, their intelligence, and their very strict ideas about what was perfect and what was not. Followed the signs to his dormitory, a small room with a window that looked out at the stars. He put down his bag and sat on the bed. Everything felt strange and new. He missed his family already, his mother, his father, and especially his younger sister. Before he left Earth, had hugged him tight and said, "Don't let them make you feel small, okay? You belong there just as much as anyone else." He had promised her he would remember that. The first few days were difficult. The older species, the silver-skinned, looked at humans the way adults look at children. They were polite but could feel their thoughts. Humans were new to space. Humans were emotional. Humans were primitive. In their eyes, Earth was just a small blue planet that had barely learned to leave its own solar system. Did not argue with anyone. He just kept his head down and went to his classes. On the 4th day, found the garden. It was hidden in the lower levels of the academy, a huge room filled with plants from 100 different worlds. There were flowers that glowed in the dark, trees with leaves made of crystal, and vines that sang soft music when the air moved through them. Had never seen anything so beautiful. He started coming here every evening after his classes, just to sit and draw in his notebook. It was in this garden that he first saw her. She was sitting alone on a stone bench near the back, half hidden by a curtain of silver leaves. He could tell by her shape, by the wing fins on her back, but something was different about her. Her skin was not bright blue like the others. It was pale silver, almost gray, like moonlight instead of ocean water, and her wing fins were not matched. One was larger than the other, and they did not shimmer the way they should. She was drawing something in a small notebook, her head bent low over the pages. She looked so focused, so lost in her own world that she did not notice watching her. He did not approach her that day. He just sat on his own bench, pretending to draw but really looking at her from the corner of his eye. There was something sad about the way she held herself, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible, like she wanted to disappear. The next day saw her again, and the day after that. She was always alone. No one sat with her, no one talked to her, and slowly began to understand why. He heard the whispers first. Other students talking in the hallways, their voices low but not low enough. "Did you see the faded one in the garden again? Why do they even let her attend this academy? She is an embarrassment to our species. Her family must be so ashamed. A daughter like that. It would be better if she had never been born." Felt something cold settle in his chest when he heard those words. He knew that feeling. He had heard words like that before, back on Earth, spoken about his sister. Had been born with a large birthmark that covered half her face. When she was young, other children had been cruel. They had called her names, refused to play with her, made her cry. Some adults were no better. They would stare or look away too quickly or say things like, "What a shame," when they thought no one was listening. But had never seen his sister as anything but beautiful. She was kind and funny and brave. She laughed more than anyone he knew. The mark on her face was just part of who she was, like her smile, like her voice, like her heart. Now, watching the silver-skinned girl alone in the garden, felt that same protective feeling rise up in him. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. but he knew what it felt like to watch someone be treated as less than they were. One evening, about 2 weeks after arrived at the academy, he witnessed something that made his blood turn hot. The silver girl was walking through the main corridor, her notebook held tight against her chest. A group of students blocked her path. Their blue skin glowed bright with health and status. Their wing fins spread wide in a display of dominance. "Look," one of them said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "The faded one is out of her hiding place." "Maybe she got lost," another said, laughing. "Someone should help her find her way back to the shadows where she belongs." The silver girl did not respond. She kept her eyes on the floor, her shoulders hunched, her whole body tight with shame. "Say something," the first demanded. "Or are you as broken inside as you are outside?" Still, she said nothing. She just stood there taking it like she had taken it 1,000 times before. Stood frozen in the crowd, watching. Part of him wanted to step forward to say something to make them stop, but he did not know the rules here. He did not understand culture. What if he made things worse for her? What if his interference caused more trouble than it solved? The students eventually grew bored and walked away, still laughing. The silver girl stayed where she was for a long moment, alone in the middle of the corridor, while dozens of other students walked past without looking at her. Then, slowly, she turned and walked back toward the garden. That night could not sleep. He lay in his bed and stared at the stars through his window, thinking about the girl with the silver skin and the mismatched wings. He thought about millions of miles away on Earth. He thought about all the times he had wished someone would stand up for his sister. And he decided that even if he did not understand this world yet, he could not simply watch and do nothing. Tomorrow he would find a way to reach her. The next morning went to his cultural studies class with a new sense of purpose. The class was taught by an old professor with silver hair and 6 eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Today, the topic was society. Listened more carefully than he ever had before. The professor explained that had built their entire civilization around the idea of genetic perfection. For thousands of years, they had measured a person's worth by the color of their skin and the symmetry of their body. Bright blue skin meant strong genes. Matched wing fins meant healthy development. These traits decided everything: what job you could have, who you could marry, how much respect you would receive. A with dull skin or uneven wings was considered damaged, broken, a mistake of nature. They were called faded ones and were treated as second-class citizens. They could not hold important positions. They could not marry into good families. Many of them were hidden away by their relatives, kept out of sight so they would not bring shame to their bloodlines. Felt sick as he listened. On Earth, humans had struggled with similar ideas for centuries, judging people by the color of their skin, by their size, by their appearance. But at least humans were learning. At least they were trying to change. They had practiced this cruelty for 10,000 years and saw nothing wrong with it. After class, stayed behind and asked the professor a question. "The student with the silver skin, is she one of these faded ones?" The professor looked at him with those 6 knowing eyes. "Her name is. She was born with a rare genetic variance. Among humans it would mean nothing, but among it means everything. Her own family sent her here just to get her out of their sight. She is allowed to study, but she will never be allowed to succeed. That is the weight she carries." Now she had a name. That evening went to the garden early. He found his usual bench and sat down with his notebook, pretending to draw. A few minutes later arrived. She walked with her head down, moving quickly to her spot behind the silver leaves, as if she was afraid someone might see her. Watched her settle onto her bench and open her own notebook. She began to draw, her hand moving across the page in quick, confident strokes. Whatever pain she carried, it did not show in her art. There was something alive in the way she worked, something that burned quietly beneath her careful stillness. Made a decision. He tore a page from his notebook and began to draw. It was a simple sketch, An earth flower called a cherry blossom, pink and delicate, famous for being beautiful precisely because it did not last forever. When he finished, he folded the paper carefully and wrote a small note on the outside. For the garden. Then he stood up and walked towards bench. She did not notice him until he was right in front of her. When she looked up, her pale eyes went wide with fear. "I am not here to bother you," said quickly, keeping his voice soft. "I just wanted to leave this." He held out the folded paper. Stared at it like it might bite her. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was quiet and rough, like she was not used to speaking. "Because everyone deserves a gift sometimes," said. He placed the paper on the bench beside her and walked away without looking back. The next day did not go to the garden. He wanted to give her space, time to decide if she was comfortable with his presence. But the day after that, he returned to his usual bench, was already there, and beside her he could see the folded paper with his cherry blossom drawing. She had kept it. He smiled to himself and began a new sketch. Over the next 2 weeks left more small gifts for a drawing of the moon, a pressed earth flower that he had brought from home, a piece of paper with a few words written on it. "The stars are beautiful tonight." He never signed any of them. He never tried to talk to her again. He just left these small tokens and returned to his own bench, giving her the choice to accept them or ignore them. She always accepted them. Sometimes, when glanced over, he would see her holding one of his drawings up to the light, studying it with an expression he could not read. Was it confusion, suspicion, or something softer? Meanwhile, learned more about life at the academy. She was brilliant, one of the top students in her year according to the academic records that were posted publicly. But her grades did not matter. Her intelligence did not matter. In group projects, no one wanted to work with her. In the dining hall, no one sat at her table. She moved through each day like a ghost, present but unseen. One night made a different kind of drawing. This time he drew herself. He captured her as he saw her in the garden, sitting among the crystal flowers, her silver skin catching the soft light, her mismatched wing fins folded gently behind her. He drew her the way he would draw anything beautiful, with care, with attention, with respect. He made no effort to hide her differences. Instead, he made them the center of the image, showing how they caught the light in ways that perfect blue skin never could. When he was finished, he looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he folded it, walked to her empty bench, she had already gone for the night, and left it there with a stone on top to keep it from blowing away. The next evening arrived at the garden to find already there, but she was not drawing. She was sitting very still, staring at the paper in her hands. His drawing, the drawing of her. Even from across the garden could see that something had changed. Her shoulders were shaking. Her head was bowed, and though her species did not cry the way humans did, there was something wet and silver running down her cheeks. She was weeping. Felt his heart crack. He had not meant to hurt her. He had only wanted her to see herself the way he saw her. But maybe that was too much. Maybe she had spent so long believing she was ugly that seeing herself drawn beautifully was more painful than any insult. He almost turned and left, but then looked up and saw him standing there. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The garden was silent except for the soft singing of the wind vines, then stood, still holding the drawing, and walked toward him. Held his breath. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the texture of her silver skin, the tiny patterns like frost on glass. Her eyes were pale gold, wet with tears that she quickly wiped away. "You drew this?" she asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes," said. "Why?" It was the same question she had asked before, but this time it carried a different weight. This time, she was not asking why he had given her a gift. She was asking why anyone would ever see her as worth drawing at all. Thought carefully before answering. Then he said, "Because I think the garden is more beautiful when you are in it." His eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked down at the drawing again, then back at, as if searching his face for some sign of mockery or cruelty. She found none. "I do not understand," she finally said. "You are human. Your kind does not judge the way mine does, but even among humans I would not be considered. I could never be." She could not finish the sentence. "Beautiful," said gently. "You already are, you just cannot see it yet." Clutched the drawing against her chest. For the first time since had noticed her, she did not look like she was trying to disappear. She looked like someone who had just discovered that the world might be larger than she had ever allowed herself to believe. "What is your name?" she asked. "Han," he said. She repeated, testing the sound. Then so softly he almost did not hear it, she said, "I am." And for the first time she smiled. After that night in the garden, something shifted between them. It was small at first, a nod when they passed each other in the corridors, a quick glance across a crowded room. Still sat alone and still kept his distance during the day. But in the evenings they began to meet in the garden. Not every day, but often enough that it became a kind of routine, a small secret that belonged only to them. At first they did not talk much. They simply sat on their benches a few meters apart and worked on their drawings. The silence was comfortable, not heavy. Seemed to need time to trust that kindness was real, that it was not a trick waiting to turn into cruelty. Understood this. He did not push. But slowly, words began to find their way through the quiet. It started with the drawings. Would hold up something she was working on, a question in her eyes. Would nod or offer a small suggestion. Then would share his own work and would study it with that intense focus of hers before pointing to a detail she liked. They were learning each other's art before they learned each other's words. One evening, about a month after they first spoke, moved from her bench to sit beside. He tried not to show his surprise. He just shifted to make room for her, and they sat together in silence for a while, watching the crystal flowers catch the light. Then spoke. "Among my people," she said, "there is a word for what I am. The closest translation in your language would be damaged, or perhaps broken, or unwhole." She paused. "I have been called this word every day of my life, by my teachers, by my classmates, by my own family." Felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "What is the word?" he asked. Said, "It means one who fell short, one who failed to become what they should have been." "That is a cruel word," said. "It is simply the truth," said. "At least that is what I always believed. Among beauty is not an opinion. It is a measurement. Our skin color can be tested for its reflective properties. Our wing fins can be measured for their exact symmetry. There is no room for debate. Either you meet the standard or you do not. I do not." Thought about this for a moment. Then he said, "On Earth we have a very old idea. It comes from a country called Japan. The idea is called wabi. It teaches that there is beauty in things that are imperfect. Broken pottery can be more valuable than new pottery. A twisted tree can be more interesting than a straight one. Wrinkles and scars and asymmetry, these are not flaws, they are proof of life." Looked at him with confusion. "That makes no sense. How can damage be beautiful?" "Because it tells a story," said. "A cup that has been broken and repaired has survived something. It has history. It has meaning. A perfect cup has nothing but its perfection. It is empty." Was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Your people are very strange." Laughed softly, "Yes, we know." Another silence. Then asked the question that had been waiting for. "Why do you not look at me the way others do? When other species see me, I can feel their thoughts. Pity, sometimes, disgust, often, curiosity like I am an exhibit in a museum. But you," she trailed off, struggling to find the right words. "When you look at me, I feel like you are seeing something different, something I cannot see." Was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he told her about. "My sister was born with a birthmark on her face," he said. "A large one covering most of the left side. When she was young, other children were cruel. They said she was ugly. They said she was cursed. Some adults were even worse. They would suggest that my parents should keep her hidden, or that she would never find happiness because of how she looked. How did she bear it? Asked. She struggled, admitted. There were times when she cried herself to sleep, times when she refused to leave the house, but she had people who loved her. My parents never once treated her as less than my brother and me, and I always thought she was the most beautiful person I knew, not despite her birthmark but including it. It was part of her face, part of her story. How could I think of it as anything but beautiful? His pale gold eyes were fixed on him. And now, is she happy? Smiled. She is studying to be a doctor. She wants to help children who feel different the way she once felt. She laughs more than anyone in our family. She is strong and kind and brave. And yes, she is happy. Looked down at her own hands, at her silver skin that should have been blue. I have never met anyone like your sister, she said. Among my people, those who are born, like me, we are taught to accept our place, to be quiet, to not ask for more than we deserve. And what do you think you deserve? Asked. Did not answer. Maybe she did not know. Turned to face her fully. He said, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly without thinking about what you have been taught. She nodded, her expression uncertain. Do you think you are broken? The question hung in the air between them. His wing fins trembled slightly, the smaller one tucking close against her back as if trying to hide. Yes, she finally said. I have always believed so. The evidence is there, my skin, my wings. The measurements do not lie. Okay, said. Now let me ask you another question. When you are drawing in this garden, when you are creating something from nothing, when you are lost in your art and the world fades away, in those moments, do you feel broken? His eyes widened slightly. No, she admitted. In those moments I feel whole, like there is nothing wrong with me at all. Then maybe the measurements are not the truth, said gently. Maybe they are just one way of seeing, and maybe there are other ways, better ways, that your people have forgotten. Was silent for so long that wondered if he had gone too far. But then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Do humans truly believe that damaged things can be beautiful? Reached over and gently touched her hand, the first time they had touched since meeting. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone. We do not see you as damaged at all, he said. I do not see you as damaged. I see you as different. And different is not the same as broken. Different can be rare. Different can be special. Different can be beautiful in ways that sameness never will be. Looked at their hands, her silver fingers against his brown ones. Two species, two worlds, two completely different ways of understanding beauty. And yet, somehow, they had found each other in this garden among the crystal flowers. She said, and there was something new in her voice, something fragile but growing like a seed pushing up through frozen ground. I do not know if I can believe what you believe. I have spent my whole life being told the opposite, but I want to try. I want to learn to see what you see. Squeezed her hand gently. That is all anyone can do, he said. Try, learn, grow. You do not have to change overnight. You just have to be willing to imagine that maybe, the universe is bigger than one species' definition of perfection. And there in the garden, surrounded by singing vines and glowing flowers, allowed herself to imagine. It was the first step on a very long journey. But it was a step she did not have to take alone. It was impossible to keep a secret in a place like Galactic Unity Academy. Within weeks, everyone knew that the human boy and the faded one were spending time together. The whispers followed everywhere he went. Some were curious, most were hostile. Did you hear? The human actually talks to her, like she is a real person. Perhaps humans truly are as primitive as we thought. They cannot even recognize genetic failure when they see it. It is an embarrassment. Someone should tell the Academy Council. Ignored the voices as best he could. He had expected this. What he had not expected was the effect it would have on. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. People looked at her now, not with pity or disgust, but with confusion. Why would anyone choose to be near her? What did the humans see that they could not? The questions made them uncomfortable, and discomfort made them angry. But it also made some of them think. One day, a young student with silver hair approached after class. His name was, and he was one of the quieter students, the kind who watched more than he spoke. "I have seen you with the girl," said, "the faded one, may I ask why?" Studied him, trying to decide if this was a genuine question or the beginning of another insult. He saw only curiosity in 6 eyes. "Her name is," said, "and I spend time with her because she is interesting, she is talented, she is kind. Why would I not?" Tilted his head, processing this. "Among my people we do not have the same traditions as but even we look at her and see wrongness. It is hard to explain. She does not fit. Does that not bother you?" "No," said simply. "On Earth, we have learned that not fitting in is not the same as being wrong. Sometimes the people who do not fit are the ones who change everything." Thought about this for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Interesting," he said. "I will think on this." And he walked away, leaving to wonder if he had just made an enemy or planted a seed. Not all responses were so thoughtful. 3 weeks after, and began meeting openly in the garden, a visitor arrived at the academy. His name was Elder, and he was one of the most respected diplomats in the galaxy. He was also, as soon learned, a distant relative of family. Was everything the valued: bright blue skin, perfect symmetry, a presence that commanded attention. When he walked through the academy corridors, others bowed their heads in respect. Even students from other species stepped aside for him. But when looked at, his perfect face twisted with something that looked like disgust. First saw them together in the main hall. Was standing before her, head bowed, her body small and tight with fear. Was speaking to her in their native language, his voice cold and sharp. Could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. He understood the way flinched with each sentence. When finally walked away, hurried to side. "What did he say?" he asked. Shook her head. "It does not matter." "It matters to me." She looked up at him, and he saw tears in her pale gold eyes. "He said that I am bringing shame to our species by being seen with a human. He said that my family has suffered enough embarrassment because of me. He said—" She stopped, unable to continue. "What?" asked gently. "He said that if I had any honor, I would remove myself from public life entirely. That I should hide. That I should stop pretending I have the right to exist among real." Rage burned in his chest. He had never met anyone so cruel, so certain of their own superiority. "He is wrong," he said firmly. "He is wrong about all of it." "He is an elder," said. "His word carries weight. He has already requested a meeting with the Academy Council. He wants them to discipline you for corrupting cultural values. And he wants me sent back home." Felt cold. He had known there would be consequences, but he had not expected them to come so fast or so hard. "What will the council do?" "I do not know," whispered. "I do not know." The meeting was held 3 days later. Was summoned to appear before the Academy Council, a group of 12 beings from different species who governed the school together. Elder was there, his blue skin glowing with righteous anger. Was not allowed to attend. Spoke first. He talked about the sacred traditions of culture. He talked about the importance of genetic purity. He talked about how allowing a faded one to associate openly with other students was an insult to everything the had built over 10,000 years. "And this human," said, pointing at, "has made things worse. He treats the defective one as if she is normal. He encourages her to believe she is worth something. This is not kindness, it is cruelty. He is filling her head with false hope that can never be fulfilled." The council members listened in silence. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Others looked thoughtful. One, an old human woman named Doctor, who served as Earth's representative, looked at with something like pride in her eyes. Finally, the council leader spoke. "Mr. Han, you may respond." Stood, his heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "Elder speaks of tradition," said. "He speaks of cultural values, but what he really speaks of is cruelty dressed up in fancy words. He wants you to believe that treating someone as worthless is a sacred right. He wants you to believe that judging a person by the color of their skin is wisdom. He wants you to believe that hiding away anyone who is different is the natural order of things." He paused, looking at each council member in turn. "Where I come from, we have a saying, every person deserves to be seen, not for what they lack, not for how they fail to meet some arbitrary standard, but for who they are. Is brilliant, her academic scores prove that. Is creative, her art proves that. Is kind, everyone who has ever taken the time to know her proves that. The only thing wrong with her is that she was born into a culture that decided she was wrong before she ever had a chance to prove herself." His face darkened with anger. "You dare." "I dare," said, cutting him off. "I dare because someone has to. I dare because I watched my own sister grow up being told she was ugly, and I know how much those words can hurt. I dare because if this academy truly believes in unity, then it has to include everyone, not just the ones who look perfect." The chamber was silent. Looked like he wanted to speak, but the council leader raised a hand to stop him. "We will consider what has been said," the leader announced. "This meeting is adjourned. A decision will be made within 1 week." Walked out of the chamber with his head held high. He did not know what the council would decide. He did not know if he had helped or made things worse. But he knew one thing for certain: he had spoken the truth. And sometimes the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. That night in the garden found him sitting alone on their bench. She sat beside him without speaking and took his hand in hers. "I heard what you said," she whispered. "Word travels fast here." "Are you angry?" asked. "No," she said, and then, even softer, "No one has ever defended me like that. No one has ever thought I was worth defending." Squeezed her hand. "You are worth it," he said, "and no matter what the council decides, that will not change." They sat together in silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, waiting for a future they could not predict. But whatever came next, they would face it together. The council never got the chance to make their decision. 3 days after the meeting, Elder took matters into his own hands. It happened at the Academy's annual Unity Gala, a formal gathering where students and faculty from all species came together to celebrate the ideals of cooperation and understanding. The main hall was decorated with lights from a dozen different worlds. Music floated through the air. Beings of every shape and color mingled and talked and laughed. Had not planned to attend, he was not in the mood for celebration, but had asked him to come. "I want to try being brave," she had said. "I want to walk through those doors like I belong there. Will you walk with me?" He could not say no to that. They entered the gala together in a simple black suit, in a silver dress that caught the light like. Heads turned as they walked in. Whispers followed them like shadows, but kept her chin up, her golden eyes fixed forward. For a while, everything was peaceful. They found a quiet corner, talked about art and earth and the strange beauty of the crystal flowers in the garden. Almost let himself believe that maybe tonight would be okay. Then Elder's voice cut through the music. "Honored guests," he called out from the raised platform at the front of the hall. "If I may have your attention, I would like to present a brief educational demonstration." The crowd fell silent, the music stopped, felt something cold settle in his stomach. "As many of you know," continued, "the species has long been dedicated to the pursuit of genetic excellence. Our traditions are ancient and well-founded. They have allowed us to build one of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "But tonight, I wish to show you what happens when those traditions are ignored. What happens when nature fails? What happens when genetic variance is allowed to spread unchecked?" Understood what was about to happen a second before it did. He reached for his hand, ready to pull her toward the exit. But it was too late. Of House called out, "Please come to the platform." Every eye in the room turned to them, went rigid, her silver skin paling to almost white. She shook her head, a tiny motion of denial. Said again, his voice harder now, "You will come, or security will bring you." Stepped forward. "She does not have to do anything, you have no authority here." But only smiled. "This is a matter, human, you have no voice in it." He gestured to two large guards who had appeared near the doors. "Bring her." The guards moved through the crowd, tried to block them, but he was just one human against two trained warriors. They pushed him aside like he was made of paper. They took by the arms and led her to the platform. The crowd watched in silence. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked curious. A few mostly looked approving. No one intervened. On the platform, circled like she was an exhibit in a museum. "Look at her," he said to the crowd. "See how her skin lacks the proper blue pigment. See how her wing fins are mismatched, uneven. This is what genetic failure looks like. This is what happens when nature makes a mistake." Stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the floor. She was trembling, could see it even from where he stood, pushed to the edge of the crowd. "In ancient times," continued, "such mistakes were corrected at birth. We were merciful then, but modern softness has allowed defective individuals like this one to survive, to walk among us, to pretend they are our equals." He turned to face the crowd directly. "They are not. They can never be, and it is time we remembered that." Felt something break inside him. All his life he had tried to be calm, to be patient, to believe that understanding and kindness could change things. But watching stand on that platform, humiliated in front of hundreds of people, he felt rage unlike anything he had ever known. He pushed through the crowd. People tried to stop him. He pushed past them too. He climbed onto the platform and stood beside. His eyes narrowed. "Human, you do not belong here." "Neither do you," said. His voice was not loud, but somehow it carried through the entire hall. "You stand there talking about tradition and perfection, but all I see is cruelty. You call her damaged. She has survived every single day in a world that told her she was worthless. She has studied and learned and created beautiful things, all while people like you tried to crush her spirit. That is not damage. That is strength." He turned to face the crowd. "You call her a mistake. The only mistake I see is a culture so obsessed with measuring skin and bones that it has forgotten how to measure hearts. Is kind. She is talented. She is brave. And she deserves to be here just as much as anyone else in this room." Silent, complete, absolute silence. Then laughed. "How touching. The primitive defends the defective. Is this what humanity has to offer the galaxy? Emotional outbursts and foolish sentimentality?" Did not look away. "Yes," he said. "If sentimentality means believing that every person has value, then yes. If foolishness means standing up for someone who has no one else to stand for them, then yes. Humans are emotional. We are sentimental. We look at someone like and we see a person, not a measurement. And I think that is something the universe needs more of." A murmur ran through the crowd. Could not tell if it was agreement or anger. Then something unexpected happened. A young student stepped forward, the one who had spoken 2 weeks ago. He walked through the crowd and climbed onto the platform to stand beside and. "He is right," said quietly. "I have watched this girl for months. She is kind to everyone, even those who are cruel to her. She helps other students with their studies without asking for anything in return. If that is what you call defective, then perhaps the definition needs to change." Another student followed, a small being with purple skin and 3 eyes whose species did not recognize. "I do not know traditions," the student said, "but I know unfairness when I see it. This is unfair." Then another and another. Not many, perhaps 15 or 20 out of the hundreds in the hall, but they came. One by one, they climbed onto the platform or simply stood near it, forming a loose circle of support around and. His face twisted with fury. "This is outrageous. This is a disruption of official proceedings." "No," a new voice cut in. It was Doctor, the human representative on the council. She stood at the front of the crowd, her arms crossed, her expression hard. "What you did tonight, Elder, was the disruption. You used this gathering to publicly humiliate a student. That is not education. That is cruelty, and it will not be tolerated at this academy." Sputtered, "The council has not made a decision." "The council does not need to make a decision about basic decency," Doctor said. "This evening is over, and you and I will be having a very serious conversation tomorrow morning." The lights in the hall came up. The music did not restart. Slowly, the crowd began to file out, conversations buzzing in a dozen different languages. On the platform, finally let himself breathe. He looked at. She was still shaking, still pale, but her eyes were fixed on the small group of students who had stood up for her. "They came," she whispered like she could not believe it. "They stood with me." "Not everyone," said, "but enough to start." Looked at him then, and he saw tears streaming down her silver cheeks. But they were not tears of shame. They were tears of something that looked almost like hope. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for not letting me face that alone." Took her hand. "You will never have to face anything alone again," he promised. "Not as long as I am here." And he meant every word. The morning after the gala, Elder was summoned before the Academy Council. Was not allowed to attend, but word of what happened spread quickly through the academy like fire through dry grass. Doctor told him the details later, when they met in her office for tea. "He tried to defend himself," she said, stirring her cup slowly. "He claimed it was a legitimate cultural demonstration. He said he had the right to educate other species about traditions." "And the council believed him?" asked. "Some did. The representatives argued that we should respect their customs, even if we find them uncomfortable." Doctor smiled slightly. "But the majority disagreed. What happened last night was not education. It was public humiliation of a student, and that violates the Academy's core principles. Elder has been formally rebuked and asked to leave the Academy grounds." Felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "What about, is she safe?" "For now. The council made clear that she is welcome to continue her studies here, but—" Doctor paused, choosing her words carefully. "Change does not happen overnight. The who witnessed last night are divided. Some are angry at for embarrassing their species in public. Others are angry at you for interfering, and many are simply confused." "Confused how?" "You challenged something they have believed for 10,000 years. You told them their entire system of value is wrong. That is not an easy thing to accept, even if part of them suspects you might be right." She looked at with warm, tired eyes. "What you did was brave. It was necessary, but it was also just the beginning. The real work of changing minds happens slowly, one conversation at a time." Nodded, he understood. Victory was not a single moment. It was a long, difficult road. But at least the first step had been taken. In the days that followed, noticed something strange happening around the academy. Students who had never looked at him twice were now watching him with open curiosity. Some approached him to ask questions about human culture, about why humans saw beauty differently than other species. Others avoided him entirely, afraid that talking to him might somehow infect them with his dangerous ideas. And then there was. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. Students began acknowledging her in the hallways, small nods, brief glances, even the occasional word of greeting. It was not friendship, not yet, but it was something, a recognition that she existed, that she was worth seeing. The change was most obvious in the garden. One afternoon, arrived at their usual spot to find surrounded by 3 other students. A small purple being named, and a human girl from the 3rd-year class named Ah. They were sitting in a loose circle, looking at its notebook. "These are beautiful," Ah was saying. "I had no idea you could draw like this." Looked overwhelmed, but not unhappy. Her pale gold eyes kept darting between the other students as if she expected them to disappear at any moment. "Thank you," she said softly. "I have been drawing since I was very young. It was the only thing that made me feel like myself." Nodded thoughtfully. "On my world we have artists who work in similar styles. Perhaps you could show us more sometime." "I would like that," said, and then she smiled, a real smile, bright and open, transforming her entire face. Hung back, watching. He did not want to interrupt. This was what he had hoped for, a moment where could exist in the world without him by her side, where she could stand on her own and be accepted for who she was. Later, after the others had left, found him sitting on their bench. "You saw that," she said. "I did," smiled. "How did it feel?" Sat down beside him, her silver skin catching the soft light of the garden. "Strange," she admitted. "I kept waiting for them to laugh at me, to tell me it was all a joke, but they did not. They actually wanted to see my work. They actually wanted to talk to me." "They saw what I always saw," said. "They just needed someone to show them how to look." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My family contacted me this morning." Felt a chill. "What did they say?" "They heard about what happened at the gala, about Elder, about you." She paused. "They are confused. My mother said she does not understand why a human would defend me. She asked if you wanted something from me, some kind of trade or arrangement." "And what did you tell her?" Looked at him with eyes that held years of pain and the first fragile signs of healing. "I told her that you do not want anything except for me to be happy. I told her that on your world, people believe that everyone deserves kindness, not because of what they can offer, but simply because they exist." She laughed softly. I do not think she believed me, but she is thinking about it. For my family, that is more than I ever expected. Reached over and took her hand. "Change takes time, but it starts somewhere." "It started with you," said. Word of what happened at the academy began to spread beyond its walls. Learned from Doctor that his speech was being discussed in diplomatic circles across the galaxy. Humans were suddenly being talked about in new ways. "They call it radical empathy," Doctor told him. "The idea that humans have a unique capacity to see value in beings that other species overlook. Some scholars think it comes from our history. We spent thousands of years learning to look past our own differences, and now we apply that skill to the wider universe." "Is that good or bad?" asked. "Both, depending on who you ask. Some species see it as a gift, a perspective they lack. Others see it as weakness, a sign that humans are too sentimental to make hard decisions." She shrugged. "But either way, they are paying attention. That is new for our species." Thought about this for a long time. He had never meant to become a symbol. He had just wanted to help a lonely girl in a garden. But somehow, that small act of kindness had rippled outward, touching lives and minds he would never meet. One evening showed him something special. It was a painting, larger than anything she had made before. She had been working on it in secret for weeks, hidden away in one of the Academy's art studios. The painting showed two figures standing together in a garden under alien stars. One was clearly human, a young man with dark hair and warm eyes. The other was a young woman with silver skin and mismatched wing fins. They were not facing the viewer. They were looking at each other, and in their expressions was something that needed no translation: understanding, connection, hope. Beneath the image, had written a single word in her native language. "What does it mean?" asked. Stood beside him, her shoulder almost touching his. "Seen," she said softly. "It means seen." Felt something tighten in his chest. He had spent months trying to show that she was worth seeing. And now, here in her art, she was showing him that she finally understood. "It is beautiful," he said. Smiled that same bright, open smile he had seen in the garden. "You taught me that word," she said. "Beautiful. You taught me what it really means." They stood together in the quiet studio, looking at the painting that held so much of their shared journey. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. But something in the galaxy had shifted, just a little. And it would never be quite the same again. 8 months had passed since that night at the Unity Gala. 8 months of slow, difficult, wonderful change. His painting now hung in the Academy's main gallery. It was the first work by a faded one to ever be displayed there. The decision had been controversial. Some students had protested, others had quietly celebrated. But the painting remained. And every day, students from dozens of different species stopped to look at it, to read the small card beside it that explained its meaning. Seen, such a simple word, such a powerful idea. The Academy itself had changed. Not completely, not yet, but visibly. A small group of students had started wearing silver accessories, pins, ribbons, small touches of the color that had once marked someone as broken. They called themselves the Gray Wing Society, and they met once a week to discuss how to change their culture's obsession with perfection. Attended when she could, though she still found it strange to be seen as a symbol rather than an outcast. And had learned more about himself in these 8 months than in all his years on Earth. He had learned that standing up for what was right was harder than he had ever imagined. There had been nights when he doubted himself, when the hostility from some students made him wonder if he had done the right thing. But then he would see laughing with her new friends, or defending another overlooked student, or a young quietly questioning the traditions they had been taught, and he would know that it had been worth it. He had also learned that kindness was not weakness. Some species still looked down on humans for their emotionalism, but others had begun to see what Doctor called radical empathy as a strength. Several academy clubs had started inviting human students to speak about Earth's history with prejudice and how they had learned to overcome it. Not perfectly. Humans still had much work to do, but the effort itself was seen as valuable. Now, on a quiet evening in late spring, stood in his dormitory room and packed his bags. His exchange term was ending. Tomorrow, a shuttle would take him back to Earth. He had known this day would come. He had tried to prepare for it. But now that it was here, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and sadness. He missed his family desperately, his parents, his brother, and especially, who had sent him messages every week asking about his adventures. But he was also leaving behind something precious. Someone precious. A knock at his door. Opened it to find standing in the hallway, a package wrapped in silver paper in her hands. "May I come in?" she asked. He stepped aside and she entered. His room looked bare now, most of his belongings already packed. Looked around at the empty walls, the folded clothes, the sealed boxes. "So it is true," she said. "You are really leaving." "My term is over," said. "I have to go back to Earth, to my family, to my life there." Nodded slowly. She had known this too. They had talked about it many times over the past weeks, preparing themselves for this moment. But knowing something and feeling it were very different things. She held out the package. "I made this for you, a gift to take home." Took it carefully and unwrapped the silver paper. Inside was a notebook bound in soft gray leather. He opened it and found page after page of drawings, scenes from their time together. The garden at night. The crystal flowers catching starlight. Sitting on their bench, lost in his own sketching. And at the very end, a portrait of himself, rendered with the same care and attention he had once used to draw her. "So you will not forget," said quietly. "So you will have something to remember me by." Felt tears prick at his eyes. He was not ashamed of them. Humans cried, it was part of who they were. "I could never forget you," he said. "You changed everything, not just here at the Academy, but in me. You showed me that reaching out to someone, even when you are scared, can create something beautiful. You gave me courage I did not know I had." Smiled, but there was sadness in it. "You give me too much credit. I was just a lonely girl in a garden. You were the one who chose to see me." "Because you were worth seeing," said. "You were always worth seeing. I just helped you realize it." They stood together in the half-empty room, the weight of goodbye pressing down on them both. Outside the window, stars burned in the endless dark. Somewhere out there was Earth, millions of miles away. And somewhere else was the where would return someday, carrying new ideas about what it meant to be beautiful. "Will you write to me?" asked. "Every week," promised, "maybe more often." "And will you come back someday?" Reached out and took her hands in his. Her silver skin was cool against his warmth. "I will find a way," he said. "I do not know how yet, but I will find a way." Stepped closer and did something she had never done before. She wrapped her arms around him and held him tight, her mismatched wing fins folding around them both like a shield against the universe. "Thank you," she whispered into his shoulder. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for teaching me that I was not a mistake, that I was never broken, that I was beautiful all along. I just could not see it until you showed me how to look." Held her just as tightly. "You taught me too," he said. "You taught me that the bravest thing a person can do is keep going, even when the world tells them they should give up. You survived so much. That strength was always inside you. I just gave you a reason to let it show." They stayed like that for a long time, two young people from different worlds, holding onto a friendship that had changed them both forever. Finally stepped back. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling, that bright, open smile that would carry in his heart across all the miles between stars. "Go home," she said. "Hug your sister. Tell her that someone on the other side of the galaxy is grateful for her because she helped make you who you are." Nodded, "I will." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, an earth flower preserved in clear resin, its petals still pink and perfect. "For your garden," he said, placing it in her hands. "A cherry blossom. On Earth, they bloom for only a short time each year. People travel from everywhere to see them. We think they are beautiful precisely because they do not last forever, because they remind us that precious things are worth celebrating, even if we cannot keep them." Looked at the flower, then back at, "Like us?" she asked. "Like us," agreed, "but also not like us, because even when I am gone, what we built here will remain, the ideas we shared, the minds we changed, the students who will look at your painting and start to question what they were taught. That will last, that will grow. Long after both of us are gone, something we started here will still be alive in the universe." Held the flower to her heart. "Then we were worth it," she said. "All of it, every hard day, every cruel word, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it." "Yes," said simply, "it was." The next morning, boarded the shuttle to Earth. He sat by the window and watched the Academy grow smaller beneath him, that great station orbiting a distant moon, where beings from across the galaxy came to learn together. Far below, he knew, was standing at the observation deck, watching his shuttle climb into the sky. She was not hiding anymore. She was not ashamed. Her silver skin caught the light and her mismatched wing fins spread wide, and she stood tall for anyone who wanted to see. And across the galaxy, in classrooms and councils and quiet corners, beings of all species were beginning to whisper a new idea. An idea that had started with one human boy who looked at an outcast and saw something worth defending. An idea that would spread and grow and change things in ways no one could predict. Maybe the humans see something we do not. Maybe damaged is just another word for different. Maybe beauty is not a measurement after all. And maybe, just maybe, every person in the universe deserves to be seen. Smiled as Earth came into view, a small blue jewel hanging in the darkness. He was going home. But part of him would always remain among the stars, in a garden full of crystal flowers, with a silver-skinned girl who had taught him that the most beautiful things in life are the ones others overlook. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.